Pineal Yoga Podcast number 1. My name is Mahesh Mahanglik. With me is Chris Porfido. Together, through questions and answers, we will evolve knowledge on pineal yoga to be shared with a wide group of listeners interested in the pineal gland and it being the gateway to the soul. So Chris will ask questions and I will answer and we will begin. This is Mahesh Mahanglik. We are beginning to talk and share information on the pineal gland through these podcasts. This is the first podcast in a series where gradually the knowledge on pineal gland will evolve. I have with me Chris Porfido, who will raise questions on the subject. And together we will then develop these series of podcasts. So, Chris, are you ready?
Yeah, Mahesh, how are you doing?
I'm fine, Chris.
So, I had some questions for you about the pineal gland. Can you explain to me what the pineal gland is?
Yeah, pineal gland was discovered about 300 years before Christ. And while in the beginning it did not attract anyone's attention, eventually now today it has caught on as the most energetic gland, very tiny, of the shape of a pine cone, as tiny as a rice grain, hidden between the two hemispheres of brain in the rear, almost on the same level as the point between the two eyes. About 300 years ago, a French mathematician and a philosopher, Descartes, after investigating this gland, declared it to be the gateway to the soul. And then most recently, Chris, another psychologist, researcher, Rick Strassman, did a very extensive work on this gland
Okay.
what it secretes, and how it has the most important role in approaching the one source from whom or from which the whole universe evolved.
So are
Chris?
you telling me that this gland is the seat of our soul?
No,
No?
no.
Okay.
Listen to me. It is a gateway to the soul.
Okay.
The seat of the soul, as we know, in pretty much everybody's opinion, happens to be the heart center, which is where the pure consciousness of the one source remains most of the time. Although it can be anywhere in the body, however, most of the time it is at the heart center. So that is the seat of the soul.
Okay. Well, back to the pineal gland. I've
Yes.
heard that the pineal gland releases a molecule known as DMT during deep sleep, and this DMT molecule has been called the spirit molecule. Can you further explain this?
Yes. The secretions from the pineal gland have been collected and analyzed to be the dimethyltryptamine, which is known to reveal the one source to the mind, and accordingly it has taken the name as the spirit molecule. Chris, you should also know, I guess, and you did mention a few times to me also that the shamans, the Indians in Peru, had extracted what is known as ayahuasca from a tree bark
Yes.
and leaves of another tree together. And that extract, ayahuasca, has DMT as the major constituent.
Yes. And it's considered
So-
very sacred to these different tribes in
Well, I don't know about
South
the tribes,
American
but definitely
regions.
shamans.
Yeah. Well, shamanism is the
No.
practice. Yes, the shamans know.
Shamans know a
Yeah.
lot about ayahuasca, how much to take, when to take, what to do.
Yes.
It's quite interesting that for knowing to have an experience of partaking it.
And it helps people with post-traumatic stress syndrome and or disorder and different.
that is why that
issues.
ayahuasca has been known as a healing substance.
Yes.
Not just as a spirit molecule of DMT, in other words, revealing the soul or the one source that I call it and we call it in our group. And talking about group, Chris, I should say something about how we get together on Tuesdays
Sure.
every week. The yoga practitioners that come to me and also anyone else who is interested in sharing knowledge on different topics. And amongst this group, the members are very much interested in knowing this pineal gland and sharing.
Yes. Yeah,
Knowledge.
I find the group very beneficial in expanding my knowledge of these different types of spiritual topics. Definitely.
Very good. So go ahead.
So the pineal gland is the third eye. I have another question here.
Yeah.
I've
okay,
heard that
very good.
Reptiles actually have a lens on this gland. Does that mean it's an actual eye? Is it the eye of our imagination?
Well, I don't know about the reptiles having a lens on the pineal gland, but yet
This is just what I've heard. I don't know.
We're talking about the human beings. All I can tell you is that so far in yoga world, the third eye was said to be either the point between the two eyes or somewhere on the forehead. And now, very clearly, that we know that pineal gland is the one that lets the mind connect with the one source. We have to now call the pineal gland the third eye, and not the third eye being at the forehead or between the two eyes. It did serve the purpose of everybody practicing with that knowledge of third eye taken to be at the forehead as long as it did. But now that we know about pineal gland, Chris, I think we have to redefine all the practices and adapt all those practices to looking at the pineal gland as the third eye. And I'll talk about that third eye a little more. But go ahead, what were you going to ask?
Well, I have seen a third eye on people's foreheads after ingesting 3 grams of psilocybin. That's kind of weird.
Where did you see that? My God, you are really... Anyway.
Well, what do you think of that?
Back to third eye, to keep our discussion to only well confirmed knowledge and not go beyond, at least for the next few podcasts. What is the third eye? Let's just talk about that.
Okay.
Third eye word came about because this is the only way that human beings could go beyond the senses, the 5 senses being the way to bring the knowledge, bring the information, input to the mind. Whereas one source, as we all know, is beyond the 3 dimensions of space and time. It is multidimensional.
Yeah.
And to know the multidimensional with the limited senses is impossible. So the yogis coined the word as third eye, meaning more than the two eyes, the physical two eyes. Now, I take the approach, why even call it third eye? It has to be some term which will be applicable to some way to gather the information of that multidimensional divine one source. In that case, it could even be called ESP, extrasensory perception.
Okay.
I mean, the words that were used by a professor at the Duke University, ESP. So it's a matter of coming up with, and maybe you and I can come up with a word which will more correctly
Describe this.
describe the way to collect or bring the information into the mind of multidimensional divine being into a physically limited mind.
Well, I've heard that there's like these little crystals on the pineal gland. I don't know if it's true, but so is like the pineal gland, like it's like an antenna to the source? Like it's our like...
Again, my information is limited in that area, but maybe we should do some more research and talk about it, perhaps.
Definitely.
In the second and third and so on podcasts. But for today, Chris, do you think we should conclude this podcast at this point?
Yeah, I think for the next podcast, we should go dive deeper into ways we could maybe activate this gland, this pineal gland, and open our third eye.
Very good. So it was nice that we talked.
Yeah, it was
began
nice. Very
broadcasting.
Informative.
Well, I'm glad. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Mahesh.